Welcome to the Point. We're doing quite a long series on evolution because I believe it's very, very important. Remember, they're teaching evolution to our children and to our teenagers and to our young people in universities, and they're teaching it as fact. And I think it's rubbish, it's anti-biblical stuff, and I think it should be exposed for what it is. I've entitled this series, Evolution is Impossible, and this is number 9 of the overview of evolution. And we'll continue on the concept of irreducible complexity. And at the end of the last program, we were beginning to talk about photosynthesis, the amazing, totally supernatural process by which plants produce oxygen and food for humans and all living creatures. So let's look at image number 80D. That's a very simplified picture of trees, which in the presence of sunlight convert water and carbon dioxide into oxygen and also produce in the leaves themselves starch, carbohydrate, and we eat carbohydrate, and of course we breathe in the oxygen. Now, all living animals, birds, fish, reptiles, humans, we all need lots of things, but one of the things we really need is starch, or carbohydrate and oxygen. I'll tell you why. That's how we produce our energy in the Krebs citric acid cycle. I won't go into the Krebs citric acid cycle now because it's something that happens in the cells, all of our cells. But basically, the reason we stand up is because we produce energy in our cells with the Krebs citric acid cycle. Let's go back to this picture, picture 80D. One of the byproducts of the frogs and the humans and the deer and everything else is carbon dioxide, which is an acid gas. It's toxic. In fact, it's so toxic, if there was too much carbon dioxide around, we would all die. We would get too acid and we'd all die. It's basically you mix carbon dioxide with water and you've got an acid. Anyway, we breathe off this acid. Of course, the plants say yippee because they love carbon dioxide. It's what they breathe in. You know, plants breathe in the same way as we breathe. They have their little stoma or stomata, little tiny openings in their leaves so that they can breathe in air, and they extract the carbon dioxide. And in the presence of sunlight, they convert water and carbon dioxide into oxygen and starch. Now, as you can see, this is a symbiotic process. The plants couldn't survive without all the birds and the fish and the animals and the humans giving off CO2, carbon dioxide, and the other way around. All living creatures couldn't survive unless the plants provided food and oxygen. And this is another example of irreducible complexity. The evolutionists want to say it all happened by chance. I'm sorry, but photosynthesis is one of the most complicated and miraculous processes in the whole of nature. And that's what we're going to look at today, to show you it couldn't possibly have happened by chance. As I said, all living organisms breathe in and metabolize oxygen and exhale the waste product of combustion, which is carbon dioxide. And all plants do exactly the opposite, which maintains the equilibrium. That's why it's what is called a symbiotic process. The plants need us, and we need the plants. You couldn't have one without the other. They've both got to be there. And according to the evolutionists, it all happened by chance simultaneously at the same time. So to quote what an evolutionist would say about this amazing interdependent process, vital for all life, purely providentially, also spontaneously arose purely by chance. So I want to look at this chance of theirs and talk about the miracle of photosynthesis. Let's look at image 81. And this is a basic idea. I'm not going to talk in detail about photosynthesis because I've done a whole program on photosynthesis. If you look at this image number 81, you can see a leaf, and you can see the sun up there. And inside the leaf, basically what's happening is photosynthesis, which is a very, very complex reaction. As I say, carbon dioxide and water is converted in a very, very lengthy set of chemical processes into starch and oxygen. Now, the Earth's atmosphere, what we breathe in and out, is mostly composed of nitrogen, about 80% of it. The oxygen makes roughly 20%. I'm talking in rough amounts. And the other tiny amounts are carbon dioxide, argon, ozone, water vapor, and some other gases. Now, plants release oxygen during photosynthesis, and during photosynthesis, they change water and carbon dioxide into sugar, which they use for food, and we use for food, and the animals use for food as well. Of course, we eat the animals as well, and the fish, but basically they all survive. They're all most of them are vegetarians. Right, now let's look a little more detail. I'm not going to go in detail into photosynthesis. Let's have a little look at photosynthesis now in the next picture, which is image 82. This is a very, very simplified image of what happens in photosynthesis. I don't want to go into huge detail about biochemistry, but anyway, carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight and also in needing chlorophyll produces carbon dioxide and oxygen. Now, if we look at so in other words, while we inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, plants do exactly the opposite and inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. So without plants to feed us and the animals, which most people use for food, we'd have nothing to eat. Now, here, image number 83 is a very, very simplified diagram of what happens during photosynthesis. That is a really simplified example. I've actually spoken at a conference for about an hour about exactly what happens during photosynthesis, and even in that hour I only gave a simplified version. To think that that all happened by chance, absolutely no chance whatever. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to think that that happened by chance. I'm not going to go into details of it. There's actually a light reaction and a dark reaction. Plants actually do photosynthesis when it's dark as well. But the thing is that plants are essential for life. They give us food to eat, oxygen to breathe. They breathe in our toxic carbon dioxide and toxic gases from the air, and they protect the soil from wind and from water runoff and help to control erosion. They release water into the air during photosynthesis. And so the whole miraculous process of photosynthesis is considered of utmost importance for the existence of life on Earth. And, it's all very well saying, life evolved by chance in the primordial slime, and photosynthesis evolved by chance in the primordial slime, and everything happened by chance in primordial slime. It's stretching credibility to ridiculous extremes to say that this all happened by chance. This God called chance is just unbelievably ridiculous. I believe in a creator. His name is Jesus Christ. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. All things were made by him. Nothing was made that was made without him. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So let's look at the next picture, which is 83b. Why is photosynthesis so important? Well, it's the process by which plants use the energy from sunlight to produce sugar and oxygen from water and carbon dioxide. Let's look at the next picture. I'm not going to, this is 83C, the Krebs cycle. This is actually what happens in all of our 100 trillion cells. It is really complicated. I'm not going to go into any detail now. But basically, what's happening in that really complicated cycle, which all medical students have to learn by heart, by the way. So I actually, at one time in my life, I had to learn that by heart, is that basically energy is created within the cells. I don't really want to talk too much, but there's something within your cells called ADP, which is a low energy protein, and another protein called ATP, which is a high energy protein. And in this organic cycle, the Krebs cycle, using oxygen and starch or sugar, the low energy ADP is converted into high energy ATP, and basically that's how we produce energy in our bodies. That's how we stand up. That's how we walk, talk, think, breathe, and everything else. It's because energy is produced, which comes from the sun, photons from the sun to the plants, which produce oxygen and food, which come into our the oxygen comes into our respiratory system, our food comes into our alimentary canal, and then a whole lot of processes, including the liver, take it to the individual cells where this amazing thing, the Krebs cycle, happens. I'm sorry, Mr. Evolutionist, I just think this whole idea of all happening by chance is just absolutely ridiculous. I'll be honest, it's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So, in the Krebs cycle, sugar and oxygen is converted into ATP, which is the fuel used by all living organisms. Let's now look at actually the miracle within the plants happening all the time. That's picture 83D, and that's just a simple microscope of what you would see, a microscope picture of what you would see if you looked at any leaf, any plant stem up close. You would see little green blobs. We're still on actually 83D, called chlorophyll in plants. Now, chlorophyll is in all vegetable matter, which harnesses the energy from the sun to manufacture vegetable plant structures and energy and produces oxygen as a waste product. So this oxygen is vital for the life of all animal life forms. Now, this is what the evolutionists have to say. According to evolutionists, this all happens simultaneously, perfectly developed at exactly the right time, and purely by chance. Well, how very convenient for them. Let's look at image number 84, primitive life forms. That's good, that's fine. And that is what our children are taught at school, that primitive life forms slowly evolve into complex life forms. You've probably heard me, if you've listened to these programs before, me tell you that there is no such thing as a simple or primitive life form, because for one thing, all life forms have got DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the most complex genetic code in the universe. And in fact, you also heard me say that an amoeba, a unicellular organism, one cell, has 200 times as much DNA in it as one normal human cell. So primitive life forms, according to the evolutionists, are formed very slowly. We've got that picture in front of you, which is DNA, image number 85. All primitive life forms contain DNA, the most complex genetic storage medium known to man. So let's look at the next picture, which is image 86, which is RNA, or messenger RNA generation in a human cell. Now, I'm not going to go into details, but basically DNA is a genetic code. I've mentioned this before, but that code must be translated into a message which is in the RNA, it's called messenger RNA, to the periphery of the cells, so that each individual cell has a God-given code exactly how to develop into the particular cell that it's supposed to be. An eye cell develops into an eye cell, a heart cell develops into a heart cell, a liver cell develops into a liver cell, because the genetic code in the center, this long chain of amino acids, nucleic acids, basically, this long chain of this genetic code gives off a message in the form of RNA, which goes to the periphery of the cell, and that's how amino acids are made in the periphery of the cell. So we have 100 trillion cells in our body, and each single cell has incredibly complex mechanisms within it, such as RNA or RNA generation. Now, a little bit of technical stuff. Now, this ribonucleic acid, or RNA, it's the family of a large biological molecules that form multiple vital roles in the coding, decoding, regulation, and expression of genes. Basically, I'm not going to repeat that. All you need to know is it's really complicated. Really complicated. I mean, I expect some of you heard of the Enigma machine, which is in World War II, the German coding machine. This code is vastly more complicated than the Enigma code or any code that could ever be created by man. Now, RNA, together with DNA, comprises the nucleic acids, which, along with proteins, constitute the three major macromolecules essential for all forms of life. A bit complicated, that. But my point is that all life has DNA, RNA, and all these codes within them, and it must be perfect, right, first time. Otherwise, that cell will die very quickly. Every single life form must have DNA and RNA working perfectly all the time. But evolutionists, they disregard all this, and they say, well, these are simple life forms. It makes me very cross, because I'll tell you, if people who do actually professionally for a living, whatever their personal beliefs, if they actually spend their life looking at DNA and RNA and the systems within our bodies, nobody would ever say anything relating to the body is simple. Let's look at the next image, number 87, that's DNA and RNA. The actual process by which DNA is replicated into RNA is unbelievably complicated. Again, I haven't got time to go into all the details. Just trust me, it's just it's irreducible complexity again. It can't sort of work. Either it works or it doesn't work. Either the message gets to the periphery of the cell and it works, or evolution gets it wrong. The RNA does not get to the periphery of the cell, and basically the cell dies. It's as simple as that. So I'm not putting up with any more stuff from the evolutionists about simple life forms. There is no such. If you could just remember one thing from this series, this is it. There is no such thing as a simple life form. I'll say it again. There is no such thing as a simple life form. Let's look at the next picture, which is number 88. That's DNA, the molecule of life. It's unbelievably complicated. Nothing we can design comes anything close. It's more complicated than any design system we could possibly design. Only a super intelligence could ever design DNA. His name is Jesus Christ. Now, each human cell has 46 chromosomes. Remember, we have 100 cells, 100 trillion cells, but each of those 100 trillion cells has 46 chromosomes. And each human cell has 2 meters of DNA with 3 billion DNA molecules made up of the following bases. You don't need to remember these, but you may have heard of these molecules. They're called adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Now, there are approximately 30,000 genetic codes for the various different proteins in our bodies. So, as I told you, we've got 100 trillion cells in our bodies. There are at least 30 genetic different codes for each different type of cell. For example, an eye cell is different from a heart cell, which is different from a lung cell. But even amongst the eye cells, obviously the lens is different from the retina, which is different from the conjunctiva, which is different from the rods and cones. So those are just describing the genetic codes for the different proteins in our bodies, but they are put together in different ways in different organs using the DNA. So the whole story of DNA and RNA is the most complicated genetic code in the universe. In the next program, I'm going to move on and talk about natural selection. Actually, I've probably got a little bit of time to start on it right now. Now, according to evolution, you've heard of this thing, natural selection, complex life forms arose by a process of evolution known as natural selection, so that poorly adapted life forms could be removed by predators from the evolutionary process. Now here is a ridiculous picture, number 89. This is an evolution of a fish. Someone has made this up using Photoshop. You will never see this in real life. But we are told, our children are told in universities and schools, that fish evolved into reptiles, which evolved into mammals, which evolved into monkeys, which evolved into us. You can believe that if you like. I definitely reject that, because that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that we are created in the image of God. God said, let us make man in our own image, male and female created he them. He did not say we came from monkeys. It says in the end of the book of Luke that Adam was the son of God, not the son of a monkey. Now, coming back to evolution, they say that primitive life forms, I hate this word, primitive life forms, there is no such thing, but anyway, primitive life forms such as fish were subjected to the process of natural selection so that they evolved into more complex life forms such as reptiles, mammals, and birds. And here we have in image 90 the evolution of man. This is not what really happened, but this is what they want us to believe. They want us to believe that chimpanzees, well, did whatever they think they did. I'm not even going to repeat it. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. According to evolution, eventually man evolved from the apes through a series of intermediate forms. Let's talk a little bit about image 91, which is the evolution of animals. That's a typical picture that you'll see in an evolution textbook about how different species of animals changed from one species into another species using this process of gene mutation and natural selection. I hope you're enjoying this series of programs on evolution. It is quite a long series because evolution is a really important subject. It's taught as fact in all of our schools. And I think it's terribly important that all Christians have a simple understanding. I've tried not to make this too complicated, have a simple understanding of exactly what it is the evolutionists are teaching. They're teaching stuff which I think is absolutely outrageous. To be quite honest, that's quite rude for me, but I think it's absolutely outrageous. When you actually look at the scientific processes going on, nobody could possibly talk about a simple life form, because there is no such thing as a simple life form. The Bible is very, very specific about how life formed, how God created the heavens and the earth, and how in the beginning was the Word, that's Jesus Christ in the book of John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. In him was life. Life comes from Jesus Christ. Now, this evolutionary process cuts God out completely and replaces the Lord Jesus Christ with a God called chance. But this chance thing is taken to absolutely ridiculous extremes. If you've got any thoughts about this, we'd love to hear from you. Please write to info@Revelation TV. I haven't had a lot of feedback, actually, on this evolutionary series, and I'm hoping you're enjoying it. We want to teach, let you know why we think evolution is not for Christians, why it's not in the Bible. But please write to us at info@Revelation TV. There's a lot of information on my website, which is freechristianteaching.org. Okay, bless you. Thanks for joining us, and see you again soon. And God bless you. Bye now.